My predictions for Imola was not close.
Sorry.
The predictions for Imola. So in the preview for Imola, we done our predictions and I wrote them down. And I've just wrote down what the actual result was. Needless to say, I don't think we got much right. One person got
I
one thing spot on, but that was it.
I I didn't even try. Wasn't
No, what?
even worth it.
Yeah, one person got two things right, actually. But other than that, that was
Can
it.
I claim a moral victory for Ferrari's absolutely atrocious qualifying?
No, because your wild card was that Ferrari would have a double DNF,
I know, and they nearly did. Um,
but they didn't.
but they nearly did. Um, all right, we are live on YouTube. Hello, YouTube.
YouTube.
Hello, YouTube
Hello.
people. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, if you are tuning in, pop us your comments, get involved in the chat. Let us know your thoughts on the Imola Grand Prix, and we'll get into Monaco a little bit later on again as well. Okay. Did I record yesterday? Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast. My name is Sean, and joining me this evening is Coops. Good evening, Coops.
Hello.
And we have a new face on the podcast this evening. Larry, how are you, mate? Good to have you along. Welcome.
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. So before we get into it, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell them about your own kind of history and experience with Formula One. What made you a fan?
For sure. Yeah. My name's Larry Velasquez. Like you said, I've been a fan since I was a kid. I grew up watching um, Schumacher back in the day. Um, Kind of got out of it for a while. My son got me back into it about a year or two ago. And since then, it's been one thing after another. We went to Austin last year, had a blast, and that kind of sealed it. So I've been doing everything I can since then to get involved with in any way I can. Yeah, I'm sure anybody who knows or looks me up, I've been in law enforcement for over a decade. Decided to use some writing skills I have to see if I can, branch out into doing some other things. So here we are, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we're delighted to have you aboard, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on Imola. And a little bit later in the year, we look forward to getting some insight into Austin off you because I think we're all a little bit jealous hearing about that one. It's definitely high on my own bucket list. Before we get into the full review, we are, of course, Everything F1. You can find us on all socials at JoinEF1 on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads. We're also on TikTok at EF1 Official. We have a website, everythingf1.com, where you can check out daily news and articles. We are obviously into the big thick of the summer season now. We're in the middle of a Formula One triple header. The Indy 500 is coming up. Congratulations to Robert Schwartzman on that one as well. We've got Formula One, Formula Two. Congratulations to Alex Dunn. Shout out to the Irishman, his second feature race win. We also have WEC news over there as well. All of your motorsport needs, daily news and articles on everythingf1.com. We'd also love it if you could check out our fantastic sponsors, theraceworks.com, for all of your F1 and motorsports merch. If you do check them out, use our code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site wide. And finally, we are, of course, doing our YouTube giveaway still. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you listen on YouTube, hit subscribe right now. If you listen anywhere else, we'd really love it if you'd head over to our YouTube channel. You'll find us over there, Everything F1, all one word. Hit subscribe, and when we hit 500 subscribers, we will pick one lucky winner of a Lego F1 Speed Champions kit of your choice from the 2024 models. So head over there, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can join in with us when we are live on YouTube and get your comments in, and we'll read them out as they come in. So thank you for that. Right then, let us get on to the. Oh, do I have to say the whole thing again, Coops? I messed it up last time. Let's give it a go. I'll do it once. Okay. Again, apologies to Italy. The Formula One AWS Gran Premio del Made in Italy e dell'Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Imola. Um, that's it. I'm only doing it once. I do it once per episode. It's not happening again. It's just an unnecessarily long name. But that was a race, wasn't it? Larry, I'll come to you straight away. Thoughts on the race just as a whole?
It was. I feared it would be worse than it was. I said I'm newer to this, so I feared it was going to be one of the so to speak natural DRS trains running through the whole series or the whole race. Luckily, pit stop seems to change that, safety cars, things like that. It was better than I feared.
It certainly was. How much of that could be down to the safety cars? Hard to know. But then at a track like Imola, they're all but guaranteed. There was an extremely high chance of it anyway. And I think a lot of the teams were maybe strategizing around that as they naturally would do. Coops, what did you make of it? Because we were talking last week in our preview that we were, shall we say, a little bit nervous about Imola and how the cars don't suit it and how are we in for three boring races. But triple header's off to a good start.
Yeah, pretty decent race. I mean, could you imagine the conversation after the Monaco Grand Prix next week if we ended up with two races that were processional? That we just shut down the championship and just move on and watch something else. Yeah, it was good. It was one of those ones like it was a race for the purists. I think. See if you brought in a new fan and you were like, right, sit down, and we are getting excited, or I was getting and they're like, that's it. It's a wee bit more. That race was a bit more of a nuanced race for the kind of fans that were, not that have been around for a wee bit longer, or even newer fans that know a bit more about the strategy side of it. So for the casual fan, I don't think they would be too happy with it, and it wasn't that enjoyable. But for the rest of us, I think we'd quite happily. I quite enjoyed it. I was late watching it because I was away watching the football, or for Larry's fans over in America, the soccer.
Yes.
It was the last game of the season, so they decided for whatever reason to put it on a Sunday instead of a Saturday. Terrible. They didn't look at the Formula One calendar first. So I watched it this morning, and it's a good race when you look up and you're like, oh, there's only a few laps to go. Oh, pretty good. So it's not a race where you're like, oh, we're only 10 laps in, really? So yeah, I quite enjoyed it. That was a long-winded way of saying it was pretty decent.
It was pretty decent indeed. And we'll do a very quick rundown of the teams. We'll do them in reverse championship order because, as is usually the way, there's not all that much to talk about with the lower teams. So I'd rather get them straight out of the way first. And we'll come to you, Larry, on Sauber first. And if there was nearly a talking point, Nico Hulkenberg got his arms out. He was actually running on pure pace up in the points, about the midway point in the race. Hulkenberg finished 12th, Bortoleto finished 18th. But is that signs that maybe Sauber are not as much of a wheelie bin as we thought, or is Nico Hulkenberg just kind of coming alive now that we're back in Europe?
Hard to say. I know, he's still known as a one lap pace guy, but the race was surprising for me for them. I don't think it's going to be as promising as we'd hoped for him. I think it's going to continue as was. I do think it was surprising again that he had the pace to get up there and stay up there. I was surprised. I think at that point I had went over to get a cup of tea and came back and was not expecting him to be up there. but I don't think it's going to continue.
No, it'd be interesting to see now how they get on in Monaco, of course, obviously being a driver's track. Bortoleto's first time in a Formula One car, but Hulkenberg is a seasoned veteran around there. Maybe they might have a little bit more luck, but of course, yeah, we'll get into it a bit later. But if you don't qualify well in Monaco, you're not having a good time on the Sunday.
Yeah, I was surprised too that they brought some upgrades, and maybe that helped a little bit, but hard to say.
It is hard to say. Good to see them fighting and actually on, the TV stream for a change, though. Alpine then, Coops, I'll come to you on this because we had a little bit of fun talking about them last week. And this wasn't the race that they would have wanted. Gasly finished 13th. Colapinto finished 16th. Not that you'd know it, because after the crash in qualifying, I'm pretty sure the blue and pink cars were not on TV once. Would Flavio Briatore be delighted? Is that what he meant by crash the Alpine? Or I don't think Crashgate 2.0 has worked the way he really thought it, did it?
No, it's not a good look when you bring in Colapinto for 5 races and then he bins it, rips the front end off the car, and then is just too tentative at the start of the race, drives off a couple of times, and then just sits at the back end. And they've got a decent car, so yeah, Gasly, he tripped up with, was it Hamilton or Leclerc at the start, wasn't it? And they kind of
Leclerc.
He had Leclerc. You had to run wide and go onto the gravel track. I mean, who knew driving off a track and ending up on the gravel track would ruin your race? You know, they're talking about track limits. I mean, who knew that a gravel could solve all that? So, yeah, pretty anonymous. Not really the start that Colapinto wanted, you know. I'm sure that Jack Doohan is trying to be extremely professional, but he's probably got a slight smile on his face. Because if I was Jack, I would do the same thing. So, you know, he really needs to do something in Monaco, but I mean, what are Alpine or anybody really going to do in Monaco?
Was it Jack's father who had the now deleted tweet
Oh, might have
after
been.
the accident?
I'm not sure I saw that. What did he say?
Uh, I can't remember the exact wording because it was deleted. I just saw a meme, but it was something about very, very professional, very. It wasn't upgrade, something like that. It was something along those lines, and then it was deleted.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, Mick Doohan, of course, a champion bike racer, so he probably was the least happy person in the world that his son got dumped out of Formula One. Nice bit of justification for them, though. The Colapinto, who a lot of talent. Personally, I rate him a bit higher than Doohan, but he is a little bit crash happy, as we saw. After he had blown up last season, he then started blowing the car up a bit. Let's hope he can. I mean, it's not what you want going into Monaco in your second race back in a car. The Coops, as you said, is okay, but probably at least on a par with the Williams he was driving last year, if not probably a little bit better. But of course, he wasn't in it for Monaco, so this will be a brand new experience for him, and he's off to a not great start. Someone who is having a great season, though, over in RB is Hajar. He finished ninth after qualifying ninth. He probably could have qualified fifth, I think, if he had an extra set of tires. Very, very impressive. Lightning quick in qualifying every single weekend. Finished ninth ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, most importantly, while Liam Lawson finished 14th. Larry, what are your thoughts on the RBs? Is Christian Horner thinking, ooh, I might have put the wrong person in the car again?
I It's hard to say with their reputation. I could see that, but I, I think he's where he needs to be. I think Hadjar needs to get some more experience in an F1 car. I think he's doing amazing. He's doing great, better than I expected. I watched him, especially last season in F2. Good title fight, but I think he's where he needs to be. Lawson, I mean, I think I don't know if I would say he's proving he's where he needs to be, or if circumstance happens to put him there. But I was a college athlete, so I've done some sports like that, high end or elite. But I just when you see someone who seems to be faltering under pressure, or at least cracking, and then continually doing so. Like I said, I think that's where he needs to be. But the cars, I mean, it's incredible that the car there's that far that spread when they have similar setups.
Hmm.
But Hadjar seems to be finding everything he needs in that car.
Yep, he certainly is, and you've got the pressure will be building on Lawson even more so every single weekend. You've got the young F2 driver Arvid Lindblad, the young Brit Arvid Lindblad, who finished second, I believe, to Alex Dunn. Shout out to Alex Dunn again. In the feature race, good race between them, only for a couple of cars getting in his way. Lindblad probably could have come on a little bit further up the road. That was a good race. If you didn't watch it, I'd highly recommend going back and watching that F2 feature race. It was a good one. But he's proven himself quite well. He won the F3 last year, settling into Formula 2 now. You're right. I don't think they're going to make too many changes at this point now. I think I completely agree. I think Hadjar is exactly where he should be. But if Lawson keeps disappointing, they might just take a punt on putting Lindblad up in the car. I think they'd be wrong to do it because I'm not sure that would benefit Lindblad all that much. But when have Red Bull ever really cared about a driver's career all that much? Let's move on to Aston Martin, to the unluckiest man in Formula One. Coops Alonso started fifth, finished 11th. Stroll started 8th and finished 15th. It could only happen to Fernando Alonso that he starts 5th on a track he can't overtake on and loses 6 positions.
I think it's just pure timing. I think ultimately they're going to go away with that weekend and be like, that was pretty successful. overall, I mean, they never got the points that they need, so that's a slight disappointment. But that was factors out with their control. That was VSCs, safety cars, wrong timing. You know, it happens. Like I think Charles Leclerc was moaning during the VSC. It's just unlucky for him, and then in a couple of races' time, it could luck out, and he could end up jumping up places or getting a win. But I think Aston Martin will be overall excited with the prospect. They done really well in the qualifying. They were right up where they should be with the kind of investment and what they've done with the, you know, in the last year or so with the new wind tunnel and factory and things. So clearly that's starting to work for them. So yeah, a wee bit disappointed, but I think overall, I think that both of them will be relatively impressed with the upgrades and what's to come.
It certainly seemed to work better than any other team who brought upgrades, which was the vast majority of the grid, actually. And if they could perform that kind of one lap pace in Monaco, you'd have to say he probably will finish where he starts. Although, as we'll chat about a little bit later, later in the week in the preview for Monaco, they are introducing a new rule for this year just to make it spicier, I suppose, to add a little bit of interest. And maybe just don't bet on Fernando Alonso finishing where he starts because, as he said himself, he is the unluckiest man in the world. But as he said, the upgrades did work. If they can get through Monaco, Spain should be pretty good for them because Spain is the testing ground, I suppose, historically for a lot of upgrades. And if it works in Spain, it should work anywhere. So it'd be interesting to see. That was presumably their last kind of big package for the season. But yeah, not too bad for Aston. They'll be disappointed to not come away with points. Even more disappointed, though, and arguably the worst team of the entire weekend was Haas. Larry, I'm going to toss the American team to you for this one. Ocon DNF'd with, I think, an engine failure. Behrman was 17th, but it was a bad weekend overall. They qualified 18th and 19th anyway. What was it about Imola that just they didn't like?
I'm not sure. Like I said, again, they brought upgrades as well. I can't remember if theirs was as significant as some of the other teams, but they just didn't seem to get it. You know, I know team principal IL was a little upset about some of the things. Qualifying for me, this is the first time I've been upset in a qualifying session. I don't know. Maybe the angles and the timings. It seemed like Behrman got that lap in. I don't know. Like I said again, from my I may be biased, but from my side, I believe he should have got that in. But then the pace in the race wasn't, you know, I don't remember. He was mid-teens. They got up to as the highest during the race. I don't know. They just couldn't get it. And I'm not sure what happened to Ocon's. I don't know what the actual failure was, but I do know it was mechanical.
Yeah.
Come out of, what is it, Toza? And I mean, it just kind of wrapped up the whole weekend for him.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate one. You're right. I completely agree with you on Ollie Behrman. I think he was robbed of that. I think his comments afterwards were interesting, where he said, you know, they made a decision, and it seems that even when they're proven wrong, they won't correct it because they don't want to be shown to be wrong. Not great.
But they have changed it. They've done it with Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, they have reversed the decisions before. I completely agree with you that it should have been given. I looked at all the reviews. Obviously, I'm no expert. I don't work for the FIA. None of us do. But from what I was seeing, there was talks of, but they pressed the red button at this time and then it didn't flash at that time. It's like, this is not, as I think it was one of the commentators on Sky was saying, I think it was Harry Benjamin was saying that it was, so years ago, this is not like the 60s and 70s where they had to like send a carrier pigeon to the other side of the track to let them know to start waving a red flag. You press a button, the panel should go up on every single light panel and car dashboard all instantaneously. Just because the red flag is on the other side of the track does not mean that someone on this side of the track can still keep going at full speed. Everybody has to slow down instantly, so I don't buy that as an excuse. And if that is what they're saying, that it's not synced up, F1 has a serious problem with that, because that is a huge safety risk, I think.
And even if it is, it doesn't change when the drivers and the fans and everybody sees the red flag. That's when the red flag happens for them.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Williams then, a much better weekend for Williams. Albon finished 5th after running up in 3rd for a good while until that second safety car. And Sainz finished 8th. Very good, another haul of points for for Williams yet again, Coops. And it's quite telling that already, what are we, 6 or 7 rounds into the season, we're talking about, fifth and eighth being almost a bit of a disappointment for Williams and a what could have been.
Definitely, and it's just a testament to what I want to say Andy Cole. Am I right?
James Vowles.
James Vowles. Well, who's it? Oh, right, okay. I always get those two mixed up. James Vowles, sorry. What he's come in and done. I mean, I think he had an interview and he said that when he took over at Williams, they were using Excel spreadsheets to keep an eye on all their stock, and it was thousands and thousands of pages. And you're like, you're never going to run a Formula One team in 2025 using that. I mean, you've got point of sale things like your local coffee shop can use the wee, your iPads and press a button and everything sorts itself out. So, he's came in, he's figured it out. His apprenticeship over at Mercedes has done a grand job. And it's good. I remember, and I think you should probably remember as well, a couple of years ago, we were like, oh, they got 11th. Oh, look, 10th. Woo! It was like, oh, they got a point. Excellent. And now we're disappointed when they get 5th and 8th. And, I think Carlos is slowly but surely just getting the feel of the Williams. He's made a few, as he would probably admit, errors that he shouldn't have done, hitting the wall in Miami, the spin at Australia. A couple of things that a driver of Carlos Sainz's caliber shouldn't be doing. But, that every driver has their issues, except Max Verstappen, who just doesn't.
Which is,
really annoyingly, but you can't really fault it. So yeah, pretty good. I think they'll be in amongst it probably. Like the only issue I have, and it's like for most teams, and I think this is the thing that will disappoint me as much as I'm sitting here with a McLaren top on, and I like my McLaren team, and I'll support them. If Williams drop the ball with next year's regs and go back, that'll disappoint me more even than McLaren dropping the ball, because they're just right there, and then you fall back again.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's almost like they're peaking at the wrong time of the generation of cars, only to it's not like next year is like a slight evolution, like kind of the 16 to 17 cars were different, but it didn't change the order of the championship in any meaningful way. Next year has no similarities whatsoever with this year.
No, and it's a different one. It might be slightly slower in terms of Formula One. I mean, they're still trying to iron out all the kinks, and they're still coming up with things to make sure that it isn't unbelievably slow. I think there's a battery issue where halfway around the lap they'll run out of battery power and they'll end up being almost as fast as an F2 car, which really is a problem if that comes out to be true.
Especially when we're halfway through the year already, and those new regs kick it. Like they have until what's preseason tested? Probably February, and they probably have 2 rounds of preseason testing next year.
Yeah, you get 6 days now.
Yeah,
like they did for the last one. So
they've 7 months. Well, realistically, they've like a month, because the teams will then need 6 months to make whatever changes or make any new inventions that need to be made.
Yeah, and that is a big concern for anybody, for fans like ourselves or the casual fan. Like, you've got 7 months and you're still not quite 100% on these regs. I mean, what you been doing?
Yeah,
like
really. Speaking on that, sorry, because like I said, my fans especially we're on the casual side. Is that a power unit issue? Why? What is?
Well, the main thing is that the MGUK is going, isn't it?
No, the MGUH is
MGUH,
going. The heat store.
Yeah. So that's going, and then they've increased the storage capacity or outage capacity of the other MGU unit. But the problem is they've found that halfway around the lap, that runs out of power. And then there's an issue about trying to change the balance between the electrical power, the ICU power, and it's also linked to the new active aero. So the front wings will be able to move as well as the back wings.
Yep.
So they'll be able to move a bit like DRS, similar sort of thing.
It's a big factor in that they're trying to further increase the power of the electric component. So they're removing the MGUH, which is the heat sink basically, and kind of sticking to old school curves to really simplify it. It's a push to pass kind of thing. It's just from like waste braking and stuff like that. But they're upping the power of it. I think it's going up from, I think it's like 160, 200 horsepower now to like 300 or 400. And
Wow.
the and the internal combustion engines are getting a little bit less powerful. So there's a much stronger reliance on the electrical engine. If you're flying at 350 kilometers an hour and you lose 400 horsepower
Yeah.
instantly, then you've no hope. You just be crashed into left, right, and center. So that's a
Okay.
huge problem. I don't know how they're going to get over that. It seems like they don't either. But bring it back to Williams. Let's hope that Mercedes at least can get the run on that, because then Williams, as long as they are continuing to not design their cars with Excel documents, they should be okay. Let's hope. Ferrari. Let's have a bit of fun here, because I know you told me no before we started recording, Coops, but when we get into our predictions, I'm claiming at least half a point for my Ferrari double DNF because their qualifying was utterly abysmal.
I mean, you can
Um,
claim the point, you're still not getting
I That's all right. I'll have the moral victory. Um,
it.
Lewis Hamilton qualified 12th, finished 4th. Charles Leclerc qualified 11th, finished 6th. Larry, that was just it's the worst possible thing that could happen to them at their home race, the first of two. But the results, the points are given out on Sunday, and the fact of the matter is they scored good points. So I suppose two-part question is, one, did they actually have good race pace, or was it purely kind of the look of positioning of the safety car? And two, should Ferrari have put Charles Leclerc on the slightly worn set of medium tires that he had in reserve, rather than just not pitting him at all and taking the risk after that second safety car?
Yeah, I spoke on this a bit I think earlier the week as well. The strategy decisions of Ferrari still boggle my mind. But going back to the first question, pace, I, I don't I don't think they had the pace that they wanted. I don't think they had the pace that the fans expected. I mean, evidence Hamilton was behind Antonelli for the lost count of how many laps.
Hmm.
And then later after the first round of pits, Piastri passed them both like they were standing still. So the pace definitely wasn't what I hoped. Myself being a Ferrari fan, unfortunately, but good points haul overall. Um, and then I'm sorry, what was the second question again?
Second question was, so when the full safety car came out, Charles Leclerc was saying, "I'm not sure if I can
Yes.
make it. Can we pit?" Ferrari said, "We only have a new set of softs. They won't do 17 laps. We have a scrubbed set of mediums. They might not do 17 laps." But we had seen from Norris and Verstappen in particular, with a full tank of fuel, they did half the race on the mediums. So should they maybe have taken that gamble and made him a little bit safer towards the end when his tires? If that race was 5 laps longer, he'd have been nowhere.
Yeah, I think they should have. With the safety car, I think it went an extra at least 2 laps more than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, it did for
And I know
sure.
they can't. I know they can't necessarily predict that, but again, like I said, the strategy issues. When the driver is begging for, for a change of tires, at a certain point, I think you just have to listen.
Mm.
I know that strategists and engineers get paid big dollars to make those decisions, but your driver gets paid more to drive the car. I would let him make that decision. So I don't know if Vasor needs to step in and and let that happen, but I definitely think they should have and could have. He hit the cliff and pace fell off. He was battling with Albon, and
Mm.
I mean, you could see that the tires weren't there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're 100% right on kind of in a lot of circumstances, you kind of just have to let the driver do their thing. Earlier in the race, we heard Lewis saying, "Can we do something to try and get around this?" The pit wall came back to him, learning their lesson. They did not say, "We will check." They came straight back with, "We don't have a gap."
Yeah,
Easy, firm. That's not something the driver can know in the car. Lewis Hamilton did not complain about that. He knew exactly what that meant. He's like, "Okay, if I stop now, I'm stuck in traffic. Fine, we'll do something else later." Perfectly clear messaging, not very Ferrari, good to see. Later in the race, when there is an option, even if it's not the best option, there is an option. It maybe then falls on Charles Leclerc to go, "I'm in the pit lane, bring me the mediums."
I I can't remember what the exact verbiage I've heard, and I wrote as well, but it's something about Ferrari's indecisiveness or Ferrari's indecision. If there's a decision to be made, you can almost guarantee that they will wait until it is either too late,
Hmm.
doesn't matter anymore, or it's obviously the wrong decision, whatever they did. Unfortunately.
Yep. That is unfortunately true, and any Lewis Hamilton fans out there will probably be happy with the fourth, but not that happy that this just doesn't seem to be changing in Ferrari ever, because it's just systematic within them. And try as Fred Vasseur might, he can't Ferrari as much as maybe he thought he'd be able to by now.
Yeah.
Um,
What was the issue? Because I've watched the film as well. Was Leclerc, did he need to give that position back? I mean, I don't think he could have held on to it anyway with the tires, but
That's a good question. They didn't officially make a decision on it, but it was fully under investigation. And Ferrari must just looked at that and gone, "There's no point. He's going to get us anyway. Let him past, and we can cling on to him." I think the next like three cars were within 5 seconds. If he'd have got a 5 second penalty, he was 10th. So again, is that the right decision? Do they maybe battle it back? Maybe. Do they take their chances, roll the dice again? Maybe. But I think they probably made the right decision on that because sixth is better than, or where did he finish? Yeah, sixth is better than 10th. I think that was the right call. And to his credit, Leclerc didn't seem to complain too much about that. I think he knew what that meant. He could probably see the three cars in his mirrors. Let's move on then to Mercedes. George Russell finished seventh. Kimi Antonelli unfortunately had a DNF at his home race with all of his classmates there, which was cute. He brought his entire school class with him because yes, Kimi Antonelli is that young. But Coops, this is the first time George Russell has finished outside of the top five in any competitive season, any competitive session all season. Was that? He didn't look slow. He probably was just the timing of the safety cars just really didn't favor George in particular today. Yeah,
No,
yesterday.
yeah, I think that it's partly that, and I think they just weren't quite up. I mean, Verstappen was fast, the two McLarens were fast, and then Hamilton had some pace in him, and kind of they seemed to treat the tires decent. Uh, so it's just one of those things, That's it. He's not got a top three. It's the end of his season. It's going to derail from here. Antonelli's issue. I mean, I remember it because they showed you it on the onboard, and they went a bit heavy over the curb, and the car went, yeah, no,
Not
no
like
light,
that.
nothing on the dash. I don't know if it knocked out a wire, or hit a sensor, and it just went, nope. Probably, if you listen carefully, you can hear that tune from Microsoft doing the wee down, the wee turn off tune, yeah, as it goes off. So interestingly, the Haas car when it pulled off, it still had this dashboard on, so that was more than likely either a hydraulic issue or an ICU issue rather than
Hmm.
it being a
Electrical.
software electrical issue. Uh, so yeah, the the Mercedes cars are doing really well this year. They were a team that we weren't expecting too much from. It was more, I think, if memory serves me, we were speaking about the preseason at the end of last season. We were like, oh, it's going to be Red Bull or Max Verstappen, McLaren's, Ferrari, and potentially the Mercedes. And
Hmm.
it's kind of flipped a wee bit. We were kind of thinking Mercedes, potentially Ferrari. And, they're having a good season. And I think they've got two good drivers. As much as I'm not a big fan of George Russell, they do have two drivers that are pretty decent. So, and Antonelli is, I think the rookies at the minute, I would put Antonelli with Hadjar on their own, further up. And then Bortoleto, I mean, who can showcase their skills in that
Hmm.
car? Seriously. Uh, and then Behrman is kind of fallen into the Bortoleto thing where the Haas just doesn't have that enough in it to really show, but we know he's good kind of thing.
Hmm.
So we're kind of sitting in a weird kind of position. But
Would
Hadjar
he
and
have been
Antonelli,
would he have been disappointed with qualifying? Obviously, George was third and showed that there was a bit of pace in the car, but Antonelli only qualified 13th. He was like the Ferraris. He was pipped by the fast medium shod Aston Martins at the end of Q2.
well, 100% he's going to be disappointed with that, especially when you put the George Russell put the car. Even as a rookie, you'd expect Antonelli to be in the top 10.
Hmm.
And maybe even get a scraper ninth or an eighth or something. If he was running about that kind of area, yeah, you're fine. But 13th in a Mercedes is doing well, and the driver's doing well, yeah, I think he would have been disappointed.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's move on then to McLaren. Lando Norris started fourth, finished second. Oscar Piastri started first, finished third. And Larry, it will go straight to you at the start of this. Was Oscar too soft at turn one, or did he like? He really just he invited Max around the outside.
yeah. I mean, I didn't expect that move either. So maybe there was a little bit of he won't do that, although it is Max. So I mean, everybody should assume he's going to do that. But I don't know. I also think with Jeddah and some of the other issues they've had, I maybe he just didn't want to push the issue. I don't know.
Mm.
You know, brand new tires or cold tires, full fuel tank. I don't know. I could see him fighting. I think I don't know. Maybe the first lap. You know, I don't know.
Mm.
I wish he would have. I think it would have been a little bit interesting to see what would have happened. But like I said, I think they had the pace. I think they got a bit unlucky with some of the interventions, but I mean, like I said, he passed people like they were standing still on the
Mm.
drive back. So I just think it was a little unlucky. Maybe some strategy issues because I can't remember. Did they both pit twice? I can't
Uh,
remember.
they did. Lando got a little bit luckier, but the safety
Yeah,
guy stayed out a lot longer. I think Oscar pitted on like lap 15 or something like that. He pitted really
yeah,
early.
yeah.
Um, bring it back quickly to the turn one. We've obviously seen Lando and Max go toe to toe, particularly a lot last year, and Lando just loses pole position to Max Verstappen almost every single time, and everyone has absolutely slaughtered him for it. Fair enough. This is the first time that it's happened to Oscar. But if it happens again, does he get the same flack that Lando does? Does Lando just get more pressure from particularly the British media, being a British driver? Does Oscar get off a little bit easier, or was this a lesson to Oscar and it won't happen again kind of thing?
Uh, I think it depends. I think it depends on the I guess the outlet, the audience. You know, Norris was the only contender last year.
Mm.
Obviously, Piastri's leading this year, but I know for myself and some of my friends that are still newer, nobody really expected Piastri to be up top, even though he's in a McLaren, and the McLarens are amazing this year. So I mean, there's possibly some of that. I could see though that if it continues, maybe Max is just known as McLaren's kryptonite. I don't know.
Very, very possible. We mentioned there the strategy Coops, and obviously Oscar pitted early. He was about 2 seconds behind Max when he did, so you could clearly see that they were trying to do the undercut. There was a slow stop. It was about a three, nearly a 4 second stop. So whatever undercut they thought they were going to get wouldn't have worked. But where he came out, there wasn't a gap 2 seconds ahead of him anyway. So it was a bit weird for him to pit there. He wasn't pitting into clear air, no matter where he came out. At any point, there was going to be a car within a couple of seconds of him that was going to slow him down. So did McLaren just straight up fumble Oscar's strategy there, or was he struggling with something we just never heard about?
Must be a fumble. I mean, it can't be anything else really. We all know that the strategists will look at the longer game, but as you say, they were getting slotted into a gap. Basically, they did what Hamilton wanted to do, and Ferrari went, "No, we're not doing that," because you went, there isn't a gap. He's like,
Hmm.
"All right, okay, cool." Uh, so maybe they chanced it in the hope there'd be a safety car to keep things bunched up. Maybe it was just that was just when they had to do it because they had to drive the tires. Uh, he had to drive the car at the start and couldn't really manage the tires. We don't know, but on the face of it, it does look like Piastri was put into a bit of a situation that could have been avoided, I suppose.
Yeah, we saw, and it was said a couple of times on the TV, and a couple of like the race engineers were saying that the around about halfway through the stint, the mediums were kind of getting through what they call the graining phase, where they're getting dirty, and that's when the drivers started sliding around, and if you don't know really what's going on, the tires are obviously a step softer this year than they were last year. So last year's soft tire was this year's medium tire, so they were much softer. Um, but they drove through. If you're able to drive through it, which is what Lando and Max did, the car came back to you, and they were able to go. Like like we said, the mediums on a full tank of fuel did half the race, and that's bearing in mind. Like Lando Norris did half the race on his mediums while overtaking. Like he did a fair bit of battling and following in filthy air. He was attacking George Russell for a couple of laps, and because obviously he lost the place at the start, and he still made it a lot further. So coming all the way back around on that. Lando obviously pitted, I think it was just before the VSC, like literally the lap before it came out. Got a bit lucky because it didn't really hurt him. Now, if it was a full safety car, it would have really, really hurt him. It wasn't, so he managed to get himself back up. And when he came out the second time, he got moves done on both George Russell and Oscar Piastri around the outside. And okay, tire deltas allowing, but that's got to feel good for Lando, doesn't it? To be able to make those moves around the outside, which we've seen is literally his kryptonite this season. And to put one over on his teammate. Will he go into Monaco maybe a little bit more confident than he otherwise would have after his qualifying this weekend, Larry?
I would imagine I would. It was refreshing for me to see them be allowed to fight a little bit. I wasn't expecting that given the recent history, um, and especially that obviously that Piastri was ahead standings wise. But I think it was good to see. I think that'll definitely give him some confidence. I hope it gives him some confidence. I think that's something that's been. I mean, at least this season, it seems to be kind of what's been just kind of dogging him a little bit. He got disheartened. I think it was the first race. Losing a few positions or I can't remember. I just remember that I watched the headlines afterwards, and it was all about him being discouraged, being disheartened,
Mm.
and I think it's just continued. But like I said, I think this weekend maybe hopefully was a good boost for him. Um, he seemed after the race. I mean, he seemed in good spirits. I know in the cool down room, him and Max were, yeah, going after or going back and forth talking, and Piastri was kind of in the corner. So
Mm.
I think it was good for Norris though.
Yeah, I think Lando was definitely the happier of the two McLaren drivers after this one. Like Oscar would have been um, uh, disappointed to have lost out because I mean, on pure pace, Lando was catching him anyway. I think Lando in race pace had more pace than Oscar this weekend anyway. Won that pace, Oscar pipped him. Lando made a mistake on his third lap in qualifying again on his Q3 lap. I think in race pace, Lando had more pace this weekend. And it's only 3 points, but it is a gain inroad on his teammate for the first time in like 4 weekends. That he's actually gained ground on Oscar Piastri. So I think Lando will be a bit happier for that. Finally, then we come on to Red Bull. Coops Verstappen, obviously first, started second. Sonoda 10th after an absolutely horrific crash in qualifying. I have to talk about that one first. That was like in Q2. Did he need to? He looked like he was absolutely wringing the neck out of the car into turn, or was it Q1? Wringing the neck out of the car into turn one. Did he need to be that aggressive into turn one? We don't see that crashes. That chicane exists, so there won't be crashes there anymore.
No, he didn't, and he admitted that himself. He got greedy, fired it over the curb, back end, spun round, all she wrote. I mean, these kind of crashes, you see the ones that go on forever like them, they're the ones where the drivers come out. See the
Perfectly fine.
one, yeah, see the ones where it's like the sudden stop. I can't remember the driver's name. Eddie Irvine was involved in it in Spa, where he ended up under the tyres quite a few years ago.
Mm.
It was a sudden stop, but I mean, he was
Jack
right.
Jack
Uh,
Doohan in Japan.
yeah, so they're the ones like it looks spectacular and is very expensive, and under the cost cap era, it costs more issues than it's probably worth.
Mm.
Ask Mick Schumacher when he was driving for Haas. So yeah, it was bad, and I think the good thing about Yuki, and I think the reason why it probably won't be an issue is he got out of the top 10, got a point or two. I don't think Red Bull either thought that they were going to get the constructors this year. Where with the issue, anybody who has any sense within Red Bull, like we need to put somebody in the car. We've got a rookie in the car. Both McLarens are firing on all cylinders. If they don't
Mm.
always win, they're going to get the constructors. Let's try and see if we can get Max something and keep it competitive. But I think the biggest thing, the reason why they like Yuki so much is he comes out and he's owned it. He
Mm.
came out and he went, "Yeah, it was me. I was too greedy. It was stupid of me. I didn't need to do it so early on in the session. I'll look at it. I'll sort it." Whereas Sergio Perez is coming to the end of his time at Red Bull was very much, well, it's not my car, or
Mm.
it's not this. And it's like, yeah, you put the rear wheel in the grass, boss. That's why you ended up in the barrier. That's your fault. But yeah, he would come out and he would kind of say it was his fault, but then he would talk about Red Bull and they're not helping me and they're doing, and I think it just wore Red Bull down, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Liam
He
Lawson
started the
just,
pit lane, obviously, Yuki Tsunoda, so recovering to 10th helped with the
yep,
safety cars. But as we always say, you have to be in the position to get lucky in Formula One. You're not just gifted anything.
yep.
He had to stay out of trouble in turn one, which everybody did, surprisingly. Um, Picked his way through. Strategy worked for him. Red Bull, their pit stops worked. And pit lane to 10th is a good result. And I think Christian Horner will be happy with that. That's a good recovery, although it doesn't quite pay for how much damage he did to the car.
Yeah, it was a full car. It was a new ICU
Whole
was
new
put
chassis,
in.
yeah.
It was a new safety cell was put in. I think that's partly the reason why I ended up in the pit lane anyway. He would have been, because they never set a time, so he would have been pit lane start regardless.
You have to
So
commend the
yeah,
Red Bull mechanics again for doing another rush job. They've got plenty of experience with that over the past couple of years.
I do think it's funny because they seem to be the new habit now with a big crash that they cut straight to the mechanics in that particular team's garage, and you're like, they're just standing there on their heads and their hands like, oh, I'm gonna
There
get me
goes
sleep.
my sleep.
Oh no. They're like, right, where's that Red Bull?
Yeah.
You can see a few of them diving away to the back because they're no way to get parts of the car. They're a way to hit the coffee. Right, okay, change your clothes, quick, jump to the
Well,
toilet.
in Italy, working for Red Bull, there'd be no shortage of caffeine at the very least.
Well, that's it. It's just in that horrible syrupy stuff they call Red Bull. I mean, that stuff is nasty.
Yeah.
Really can't stick it. I don't understand how people can. Anyway, that much caffeine, the top of my head would blow off. So, so yeah, it was good to see him get out of it. It was, it's great to see these kind of accidents where we're quite blasé about them. Back when I started watching Formula One, and we're talking 1992, that kind of area, where you see a car like that, they're coming out with some sort of injury of some kind.
The Halo definitely played an impact in keeping him all right. Halo's done a good job in a lot of motorsports this weekend. Did you see Colton Herta in IndyCar?
Yes.
Scraping along the ground upside down
Yes.
after the rear of his car let go.
And there's still people out there that don't like it. You go on, you go.
We said it before. We were skeptics of it when it came along, but I have no qualms with it. You don't even notice it anymore. It's been well integrated. But if ever there's an annual question of, do we still need it? Yes, we do.
Yeah. I remember a situation with one of the Alfa Romeos back in Spa, and it had the wheel marks across the halo with a car going backwards over the top.
It was Charles Leclerc's car, was it not?
I think it was.
Yeah.
Guan Yu Zhou and Silverstone. And that was even worse because the actual roll hoop had snapped off. So it was the halo that helped that one. Lewis Hamilton with Max Verstappen. No, Lewis Hamilton with the wheel actually hit his neck, but it stopped it from causing any major damage. If it saves one person's life, the conversation's over. And it did that pretty much the first season it was introduced. Yes, it was a bit of a joke to kind of get used to it, and I'm sure Total Wolff would probably like to get rid of the comments he made when it got launched and said he'd take a chainsaw to it. Now when I see the old cars without the halo, you're kind of like, it looks weird.
It looks weird. It looks like a toy that you can kind of like bop the head kind of thing.
I know. I watched the second half of the Red 5 Nigel Mansell documentary, and they're talking about that season where he won his championship with the FW14B, the active suspension one. And he was in it to go, they were talking to him and he was driving it again at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. And he actually sat in and he went, now that we're in now, it's amazing how uncovered we were.
Wow. They sat on the cars rather than in
them. And he's like, wow, now looking at where we're at and how we're in and covered, and he's like, he's kind of like, wow, I was a bit insane.
I saw a video of I think it was an old clip. It would have been probably Niki Lauda in the early 80s. Or maybe not Niki Lauda. Someone in the early 80s. The cars were so massive, the engines were absolutely enormous, and the driver's just this tiny little guy basically on the front axle with a steering wheel and a whole car under and behind them. And you think, how did they all not die all the time every week?
That probably been the big fat wheels, 1,000 horsepower things. They had no downforce. It was full torque. If that goes, that goes. It can be quite jolting to see what they used to drive in and what we've got now, and the fact that like I say, the fact that we're talking about accidents like that, and we're quite blasé about it. Even Colapinto's one was quite, It was quite a decent shunt, when you see a couple of wheels off, it
Which you
wasn't.
certainly would have been able to say in the 90s that he had a
No,
decent
no,
shunt.
that was a decent shunt. Yeah,
Yeah.
that wasn't a decent shunt. He's broke a leg. It's yeah. It's a shame the amount of people we've lost just through sheer ignorance and not understanding the safety and
Mm.
or maybe just not appreciating what the body would go through under those circumstances. But now we're at a point where it would have to take something unbelievable. And even if we go back to Roman Grosjean's crash a few years ago, I mean, crashes like that only happen when it's like a set of circumstances come together
Mm.
because everything is
It's
that
not
safe
it's
now.
not the car anymore. It's not the driver making a big error. It has to be
A
some
lot of things,
madly
driver
external
making a
factor.
thing,
Yeah.
sliding off at a bit of a track that's not really got issues. I mean, that part of the
Particular
track in
iffy
Bahrain
barrier.
had never been hit by a car in the whole time, ever in any race, and it was just a 4 or 5 wee things. The angle. I mean, it was all about centimeters with Roman Grosjean, and that's the same with everything with a lot of other things nowadays. But yeah, Yuki did well under the circumstances.
Yeah.
I do like the fact he took ownership of it. He admitted it pretty much straight away. Hopefully, he done something to help out the drivers. Maybe go in and he actually was the drivers, the mechanics. He actually did apologise to them. He said, "Yeah, they've got a long night ahead. I'm really sorry," and it was very sincere. And I
Yeah.
like that about Yuki.
It's good for him to have. Not that it's good for him because a crash like that is never good, but better you do it in Imola and learn the lesson of okay, I'll dial it back 10% in Q1, especially going into Monaco, because if he stuffs it in the wall in Monaco, he's not racing on Sunday. There's
No,
just no way to the mechanics recover it that quickly. Very quickly, then, obviously, Max Verstappen won the race because he is inevitable and impossibly with the second quickest car that is, let's be fair, quite a lot slower than the McLaren up to this point, is within touching distance. He's only 22 points behind Piastri now, Larry, and it's got 2 wins. Two pretty dominant wins from out front. Obviously, he didn't start in pole in Imola, but he was ahead by turn 2. And he's by no means out of the running for this championship, is he? Especially if we're getting to the point now where developments are going to slow down and just stop. It is Max Verstappen and his Max Verstappeniness versus the two McLarens who don't know how to win a championship yet.
That is true. It blew my mind. It was just reminiscent of Verstappen 2 years ago, even when he got out front. I think 2 laps in, I think he was already 4 or 5 seconds ahead.
Hmm.
Or maybe it was a little further, but it was fast enough that I was completely surprised. I expected more from McLaren's pace, but Max is Max. He does what he wants, unless he's France or whatever his name is. But regardless of what you call him, he is a world champ for a reason. A lot of people necessarily don't like that, but I mean, I don't think you can get to that level without having the skill to back it up.
For sure.
And when you get a car under you that can keep up, and I know Yuki's had problems adjusting. The car. I know teams still probably will argue against it, but they set up a car for the driver they want. The other driver has to adapt, and they can try to change it for him a little bit, but it's going to be set to one guy, and that's Max in a Red Bull, and that car is very. I don't. I mean, I drive, for fun, and I drive for my job, but I don't think I could touch that car and do anything. I might get out of first gear once.
Yeah, I don't envy ever the second driver in that car. And even by Max's own admission, it's not an easy car to drive. He's just special. He is a generational talent, as we say regularly, and you can dislike him all you want. I'm not a big fan of him. I might be wearing a Red Bull jersey right now, but I've never been a particularly massive fan of Max. I was happy when he won his first championship because I don't like domination, and I didn't want Lewis to be up there on his own on 8. I didn't want anyone to kind of overshoot Michael Schumacher. So I was happy about that, and it was exciting seeing him go toe to toe with Lewis. Domination just gets boring. It's not good for the sport, and I'd like it to. You want to see new winners all the time. When I started getting properly into watching Formula One week in, week out, when I actually think on Sky Sports and stuff like that, you had, it was Alonso, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Button, Vettel, 5 different champions in 5 consecutive years. golden era of Formula One in the mid to late 2000s. The chances we see anything like that again are slim, although maybe this new generation of cars will help that. Right, that will do it. Oh no, very quickly, Coops, do you want to run through our predictions and see how wrong we were?
Okay, so the actual results. So pole position, Piastri. So Sean, you went for Norris for pole position. I went for Max Verstappen, and James Lamb or James L, who wasn't on his in here, obviously was the other one. He went for Piastri, so he got that right. The top three was Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri. Sean, do you remember what you went with?
Not that top three.
Norris, Russell, and Antonelli.
Oh, ouch.
Oh, bad. Mine was so it was Verstappen, Norris, Piastri was the actual top three, and I went with Piastri, Russell, and Max. So I had two drivers in there that did get the top three at least. And the other James, who's not here today, obviously got the top three as Piastri, Norris, and Antonelli. So he got one. So on the grand scheme of it, if we're giving out points for people in almost there, I would have won that one.
You would have.
But yeah, so
right. Well, thank you for.
Just shows you that we're just guessing.
Yes, we are absolute experts in the field. That will do it for our review of the Imola Grand Prix. Now, if you're listening on YouTube Live, we are going to power in straight into our Monaco preview. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to finish up here. We're going to upload our episode previewing the Monaco Grand Prix in a couple of days. So be sure to hit subscribe. You'll go into a chance to win the Lego Speed Champions F1 set as soon as we hit 500 subscribers. Hit the bell notification as well, and you'll know when that goes up, and you'll be able to join us live in future as well. Okay, then let us move on to our preview of this weekend's Monaco Grand Prix. We are, of course, at the start of yet another triple header, starting in Imola last week, Monaco this week, and then Spain the following week for a 2-week break then to Canada. So it's coming in thick and fast now. There's race after race after race. This year's calendar has been a little bit better laid out. There'll be no random mid-season holidays after the mid-season holiday this year. Last year was weird. Track info for the Monaco Grand Prix. Obviously, we all know it very, very well at this point. The Circuit de Monaco, 3.337 kilometer track around the streets of the Principality. 78 lap race. Last year was won from pole by Charles Leclerc, followed up by Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz. Fastest lap was taken by Lewis Hamilton. Now, gentlemen, Larry and Coops still with me, of course. We are not going to get into the should Monaco be on the calendar and blah, 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 because, to be perfectly honest, we could just replay last year's preview of the preview episode of the Monaco Grand Prix, and it would make no difference. But what I do want to talk about is obviously the big change for Monaco this year. Is the mandatory 2 pit stops. So, Coops, talk us through a little bit of this. Why do you think they've done it, and will it work?
Why have they done it? It's Monaco. The cars have outgrown Monaco, but the chance for the rich people to get together in a rich kind of principality and show off the fact they've got lots of money means that it stays in the calendar. It's probably more the cynical way of saying it. Any other track that's outgrown the Formula One as much as it has in Monaco would not be on the calendar, would have been off the calendar a long time ago. I mean, to put it into perspective, these cars are 5 meters long by 2 meters wide. Now, I'm 6'2", and that's 1.88 meters. So they're not small cars. So, and this is just a very, very small, narrow track. Like, you can't get 2 cars wide, really. And there's not really anywhere to brake to pass, and if you're passing, you're kind of just throwing it in and hoping for it. So what was the other question? So
the 2 stops.
Will it change anything? I don't know. Is my honest answer. I really don't know, and I don't think the Formula One knows. It's not
multiple pit stops certainly helped Imola.
Well, yeah, it did, but again, it's Monaco, and again, it's like so many wee things come into play. So it probably will. There's a higher chance that it will change something because teams now have to think about it. But the problem is pit stop windows can be quite narrow, so everyone could come into the pits at the same time, go back out at the same time. and maybe one or two cars will change. So is it really going to change it? Probably not. But knowing our luck, it'll probably rain and we won't have this anyway. The way that they've set the rule up is it's not a mandatory two stop. It's a mandatory you have to use all three of the tyre compounds, so soft, medium, and hard, which will mean that there's two stops. Because you start on a soft, maybe then you'll do like a medium, and then you'll do a soft. I think that's how they're doing it. I may be wrong because I can see in the YouTube people can see that Seán is doing some left-handed googling, so he may come up and change that. But at the moment, that's my understanding of it.
I don't think it's mandatory all three tire compounds. I think it's just a mandatory two stop. But you probably will see people doing. Someone will use all three tires. I'm sure. I was going to kind of bring it on to the next question. We'll probably see some different. We have to see different strategy, and that's going to be the game of it. And Larry, do you think someone a little bit further down, someone starting maybe like 11th or 12th? If Fernando Alonso qualifies 11th, he has to pit twice. Everyone around him has to pit twice. So is he starting the soft tires to get a jump off the lines? The only place he's going to make any overtakes, knowing that in 2 laps he'd have to pit and he can catch back up and then pit again when everybody else pits again, but he's pitted from further up.
I don't think so. I think he would go the other way, just to try to ride it out, and because I'm assuming, I'm sure everybody would agree, there's going to be at least one intervention,
Probably.
Probably two or three. I think that's going to change a lot of strategies, but I also think that it's going to be, let's start on a medium, take that as far as we can. First opportunity comes up, put on a soft or a hard to try to, or sorry, a soft to try to get an advantage, and then try to finish it on hard. That would be or mediums if they don't have to go, all three compounds.
It's possible that obviously they bring 2 sets of hard tires to every race weekend. It's not like the old days where each driver got to pick how many of each compound they brought to each race weekend, which I personally miss. I get that there's a sustainability element to it, but I thought that added a bit of strategy as well because you had, the talk of, oh, well, Jenson Button has 2 brand new sets of mediums, but Sebastian Vettel doesn't have any because he didn't bring enough. I thought that was a fascinating element in a non-refueling era that kind of maybe a bit gimmicky, but it did force a bit of strategy whether you wanted to or not. But on the subject of that, Coops, if this weekend I don't think is the mandatory all three compounds, but surely, I mean, this feels a little bit gimmicky for Monaco because it's Monaco, but mandatory, like, use all three compounds in the race would just work at every single track, surely.
Of course.
Why would they not do that permanently?
Did they not do that trial where, like, you had to use the hard in Q1, then medium Q2, softs in Q3? They done that.
They did do
I
that.
don't think they done it last year. It was the year before.
Year before, yeah.
Yeah, and that was quite interesting. Way just to kind of spice things up. But again, I don't think it changes much. This is the problem. The way that Pirelli tyres are designed now, they're not.
It didn't change much from a qualifying point of view because, I mean, the fastest car, the Red Bull at the time, the Red Bulls and the Mercs could do Q3 on the hard tyres if they wanted to, and would normally do Q1 and Q2 on the harder mediums to save the soft because they had such a vast advantage. It was just a detriment to the lower team cars. But in the race, if you had to use all 3 sets of combat, at some point, it's a bit like attack mode in Formula E. At some point, everyone would be sort of benefited and hamstrung by having to pump on the soft tires for 5 laps. Everybody. And there'd be a flurry of pit stop activity, which means there'd be a flurry of more pit stop errors, more unsafe releases, more speeding in the pit lanes. There'd just be more going on, even in Monaco.
Well, yeah, the issue with Japan was it took out variables. So you had the cars that were all very good, and I'll get to Monaco. Yeah, I see you're being a bit confused when I said Japan. So Japan is probably the most boring race we've had this year. Very much akin to France a few years back.
Top 6 finished where they started for the first time ever, not in Monaco.
Yeah, and not on a track that's designed for racing. Yep. Yeah, which is a bad thing. No yellows, no nothing. So And that was because the degradation of the tyres was lower than they thought. They'd resurfaced Sector 1, which was a high deg part of the track, which meant there was no degradation, and all the cars were very close in terms of speed. So you take out variables, you don't get a race. So conversely, you do the other side, you add in variables, there's a chance for things to happen. Now you're talking about Monaco, which is that narrow and small a circuit that the teams can't actually make their full pit stops. They've got to have things in a certain part, they've got to ferry them in. So if you've got half the field diving into that pit stop, because that's the window and they've got to do that more than once, then yes. Monaco was the place where the Mercedes had the longest pit stop ever, which was about 3.5 days because of the failure of the wheel nut for Bottas, just chewed up the teeth. So, I mean, you're right in that sense that logically, if you add in a variable, there's going to be something. Somebody's going to lose out somewhere. I just don't think it's going to do as much as people think. If you know what I mean. I think you might see a third drop to fourth or a fifth go up to third or something. Or, a couple of wee things. And now that I've said that, Max Verstappen will be 25 seconds ahead, screw up his pit stop, and then Charles Leclerc will jump in for a second weekend in a row, and then everyone will be like, oh, yeah.
Which the most exciting Monaco Grand Prix in the past 10 years have been exactly that. There's been 2016 where Red Bull fecked up Daniel Ricciardo's pit stop. There was 2018 where they got it right, but his car was dying. There was a 2023, 22 where Ferrari messed up Charles's pit stop, but they called him in at the wrong time. And they whatever it was, it was the variable that didn't need to, and they dropped him completely out of the race lead. But then you had last year, there was a red flag on turn one because Sergio Perez forgot how to drive, and decided he didn't like Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen anymore. And yes, for any Sergio Perez fans, I'm sorry, but that was categorically his own fault. That was just a clumsy mistake because he qualified crap as he normally did and was out of the back and was a bit desperate. Go back and watch it. They all pitted. There was a red flag. They all went through the pit lane. They all put on hard tires, and then Charles Leclerc limped very slowly for 77 laps to win. It's very exciting. Yeah. Charles won at home. First monogas driver to ever win an F1 race in Monaco. First monogas driver to ever win anything in Monaco since, was it Louis Chiron in like 1931 or something like that? It was an incredibly long time ago. That was very exciting, and it was the only thing that was worth watching. But like, I'm pretty sure I turned it off for like 74 of those laps.
Yeah, that's the kind of Grand Prix you put on in the background. You just listen to it while you're doing something else.
Ironing.
Yeah,
Ironing
you're doing eating something. Maybe sitting with the PlayStation on and just have it in the corner in a tablet, just watching what's going on.
Larry, obviously this weekend coincides with the Indy 500 usually. So,
yeah.
as somebody from that side of the pond, I'm not. It obviously, I know the answer to the question. Which is more exciting for you to watch? Is it Monaco or is it Indy?
Last year I would have said Monaco. Unfortunately, then I watched Monaco and decided, Indy for sure. Well, and I was going to ask as well that coming from this side, NASCAR, Indy, most of our other series, it's stop, 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 stop. They usually take forever, but it seems to have, at least for us, heightened the intensity of the race. It's almost, I think, akin back to 60s and 70s in F1 when they started doing essentially quali sims in between stints. So I don't know if maybe that's something we could get back, because like I said, that's what I was going to ask, is it seems like strategy has overtaken racecraft. It's all about the fastest start to finish time, and that's all that matters. So if we can run 3 sets of softs and do 3 quali stints, that's going to be a great race, but it's going to be slower. So it's I don't know, for personally, as I guess an American, I would love to see something like that. But again, and that's why I like Indy. I think Colton Herta in the Sanzio Grand Prix was completely undone in his pit stops. And that's I think for me that's another reason I like it. I mean, I think it was a second slower for McLaren stop this week for
Oscar.
Norris, and for Oscar, and it set him back so much. And for me, it was great because I'm like, oh, that brings some human element back into this technology driven sport. So I like it. But yeah, I my heart is still with Indy.
That's completely fair. And I'm not the biggest IndyCar fan in the world, but I did watch it. I've been watching it ever since Fernando Alonso entered it in 2017. I lived in Canada at the time, so it was easy to do because it was on at the right time. And I do like to watch it every year now. It's fascinating. It gets to the point in the middle once they've all done their pit stops and they're sort of in procession where it gets a little bit Monaco-y in that it is a little bit processional. But
Mm.
any overtake could happen with any car at any time, and anyone could just dive bomb in any of the four corners at any time. So that is exciting. And I get your point on kind of Formula One has become almost a little bit robotic. The drivers are robotic. They do the same line, they do the same braking, the same acceleration, the same tires, and the same gear shifts lap after lap after lap after lap. And that in itself is absolutely a skill. Take nothing away from them for that. That is very, very difficult to do. And the pit stops as well, they are again robotic. Anything more than 2.2 seconds is considered a total failure. Oscar Piastri, it was pure human error not being able to get that wheel on again. And that adds a bit of human error to it, which we didn't have back in the day with refueling and stuff like that. There was a lot more human error. There's a lot more parts where things could go wrong based on one person's mistake. Um, and yeah, you're right. If they had, a couple of fast stints where the drivers kind of have to drive flat out, then you do increase I suppose the risk and the excitement element, the fear factor with, you could push really, really fast and make lots of time, but you might crash. And if you're Lance Stroll, you probably will. But if you're Max Verstappen, it'll be a drive in the park for you. Yeah, no, that's a really, really interesting point. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching who would fully agree with you on that, watching and listening who'd agree with you on that. And I'm sure a lot of our fans are IndyCar fans, Indy 500 in particular, which of course is this Sunday as well. And I am also looking forward to that. So let's get into then predictions for Monaco. As I said, last year we had Charles Leclerc on pole. He won from Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton got the fastest lap. So, Larry, I'll come to you back to you for this one. Give me your prediction for pole position and the top three, please.
I'm going to have to go back to McLaren, but it's a toss up. I I would put, I think, Norris pole on this one. Just because of, like we were saying earlier, the confidence and the ability to, I think, hopefully transition that. I know he's had some issues in Q3, but I'm hoping with last weekend or this last weekend going in, I think hopefully that will help him. Top three, Max will be up there somewhere. I think mostly to make my daughter happy and my son mad. I think I'm going to give Max P1, followed by Norris, and then Piastri.
All right then. Coops, your pole and top three.
Right, so I'm going to go with Norris, and I'm going to say that he's going to take the win. I've kind of beat on him a wee bit in the last couple of races because I didn't think his racecraft was very good, but he kind of answered a couple of those demons. If he can keep that consistent and take off the wee errors that he did in qualifying, then we're going to have a decent. I'm going to see Norris do what he keeps saying he can do, and with that car, he kind of has to now. We've got to the point where he has to get rid of those mistakes because Piastri isn't going to make those mistakes. We're going to say Norris. Oh, do you know what? Let's go with a 1-2 Piastri, and then we'll say Max.
Okay.
Place.
I am going to say Max Verstappen on pole, just because he's a freak and he's a robot. Um, and it's his sort of circuit. But I am going to say Lando's going to win. I think he's going to pip him from second into turn one. Uh, Again, confidence building. He's got a couple of overtakes into him now. He's won a couple of battles straight into the next race. I think it's going to help him. So I'm going to say Lando, Max, and Charles, top three. That's purely on vibes. Monaco is always worth an extra tenth if you're a good driver. And as Martin Brundle always says, your home race is always worth another tenth as well. And Ferrari, while they were a bit slow, and they are only a couple of tenths off the rest of them, let's be honest. And first, third, and fourth, the past couple of races has been about 3 or 4 tenths. So if he's gaining the home field advantage and it's 2.5 tenths, he'll be right in there, I think. We are looking forward to that. I give you the times now for the weekend in Monaco. These are obviously UK Ireland times. So apologies to Larry. I don't have the American times. You have 4 time zones. I can't be doing that much maths. You can minus at least 5 for all of these times if you're watching on that side of the pond. Friday, practice 1 will be at 12:30 p.m. Practice 2 is at 4. Practice 3 is on Saturday at 11:30, and qualifying is at 3 p.m. And the race is at 2 o'clock. And obviously, it's not just Formula One this weekend. We have Formula 2 and Formula 3, which is super exciting. We've got the Indy 500 this weekend as well. Later on in the month, we've got the Spanish Grand Prix, we've got the Shanghai E-Prix. It's a good week. It's a good month for motorsport fans. Plenty of motorbike racing as well. There's NASCAR races this month as well. There is, if you're any sort of motorsport fan, you'll be eating well for the rest of May. That'll do it for our preview of the Monaco Grand Prix. We will be back next weekend to review what hopefully will be a little bit more interesting than last year was. We can keep our fingers crossed. We'll stay positive on that one. All that's left for me to say is thank you to Larry. Thank you very much for having your first podcast with us. Hope you enjoyed it.
It's been a blast. Hope to do it many more times. Thank you for having me.
We look forward to having you back on. And Coops, thank you as always.
Thank you very much, guys.
We will talk to you again. We are Everything F1. Check us out on all socials. Check out everythingf1.com for daily news and articles. As I said, with that much motorsport on there, will be plenty for you to dive into over on everythingf1.com. And check out our sponsors, theracebooks.com, for all of your F1 and motorsport merch needs. Use our code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site-wide. I've been Seán. Enjoy the Monaco Grand Prix. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Later.
Yay.
Where's the
Oh my goodness.
bye, YouTube. Thank you for watching.